Hey there, welcome to the Toxic Optimist podcast. This is me, the host, Nick, and I'm joined here with Kevin McGovern and Aaron Arslan. And here at the Toxic Optimist channel, we like to unapologetically flip negatives into positives to inspire a cause for good. Coach Kevin is my old friend I met last year in Blacksburg, and we've been really close friends since. He's a lifelong endurance athlete and coach and artist, and I have we have the honor of having him on the podcast today to help give some advice, some suggestions, some coaching tips for Aaron as he transitions. He finished up week 10, and we'll probably go over a quick summary of week 10, how that went. We had a 5K time trial, and then talk about week 11. To zoom out a little, we are now training for a 5K in about a week for Aaron, and that'll be the first match of the season, essentially. Preseason is wrapping up, and then we have the Super Bowl, which is the Richmond Marathon, and the second Saturday of November. So that's what we're planning for. Kevin, give us an introduction. Please tell us where you're from, what got you into athletics, who some of the major players were in your life that influenced you to be a runner and cyclist and swimmer.
Are we going to have enough time?
I hope so.
I learned early on I was fast because I got two older brothers who are Irish twins, both born in the same year, and they would chase after me when we were younger, and if they caught me, they'd sit on my arms and my legs and hold my mouth and nose shut so I couldn't breathe. That's the way kiddom was back in those days. But I saw early that I could get away from them quick, and the longer they chased me, the farther away I got from them. So my first introduction in competing was in 8th grade here in Virginia, in Northern Virginia. I ran on the track team, and I finished 6th in the county, Prince William County, and I did it from the slow heat, and there were 12 in the fast heat, and I bumped over 7 of them, and I ran a 2:21. I actually wanted to be a pro football player. Look at me, I'm huge. We lived here in Virginia, and football was everything. My father was a Marine, and he retired. We moved to Connecticut, where both my mother and father were from New York City, and we had relatives up in the area. So when we moved to Connecticut, kids were much smaller and not as fast in New England as they were down here in Virginia. So I actually started with a football program with someone who became the Syracuse head coach eventually. And I did track my freshman year, and I was labeled the boy wonder because I did every single event. The following year, I went out for cross country, and I made the varsity, and I got my first varsity letter. I don't remember much of times. We ran all kinds of strange distances, 2.1 up to 2.9. We did not run meters back then. This was in the 70s. So everything was usually done by miles. I would be anywhere from the number 2 person to the number 4 person. My junior year, we went 1, 2, 3, 4 on every team in the league. And I was one of the 4 that did that. And briefly, my sophomore year, I held the record for the 3:30 hurdles. I held it for 5 minutes, and a teammate broke it. I ran 3:30 hurdles in 40.2 seconds. I was 15 years old. The following year, we took it to a different level. There were 5 of us on the team that were very into running, and back then we didn't have ESPN. We would have to go find track and field news and read what was going on. That was our only way to see what was going on in the country. And we had read about Craig Virgin and a couple of other guys from the Midwest who were running 1,500 miles over the summer as high school athletes. Craig Virgin went on to become he made the Olympics for the 80 team. I got to meet him out in Oregon. He's still mad about not us boycotting. But I started to really come into my own my junior year. I was about 16 years old, and I wound up running a sub 2-minute 800. And I had become more of a decathlete. At this point, my junior year, again, we were a tremendous team. I could pretty much do any event other than shot, disc, and jav, and I could win that event, which would include pole vault, high jump, long jump, triple jump. I went on to the state championship in the decathlon, and I was the first person from my high school ever to go, and I finished 11th in the state. Now, Connecticut's a small state, but we had 2 Olympic and world record holders came out of Connecticut. 68, Bill Toomey. He was from down in the Fairfield area. He was the 68 Olympic decathlete, gold medalist and world record holder. And then later we had Bruce Jenner. He's from Newtown, Connecticut. He was in college at the time that I was in high school. I wound up leaving high school with 4 school records. I was recruited by Seton Hall and Rutgers. I chose not to go because back in those days there was no professional running. Everything was strictly amateur. So I wanted to be an artist, so I wanted to be an album cover artist, so I went to art school. After art school, and I really didn't run too much other than just to stay in shape. After art school, my first job was as a sous chef in a well-known restaurant in Boston. And the general manager was a running enthusiast. And he came up to me one day and he said, "I heard you were a good runner in high school." And I kind of laughed a little bit. I don't know how he heard. I said, "Yeah." I was the state MVP in Connecticut in 1976. The Banking Center of Waterbury gave me that award. I was also the MVP of our team. We were runner-up state champions. Aaron, we had a phenomenal team. We had a miler who was second in the state. He ran a 4:18. We had another runner who ran a 4:20, but he wound up coming down to the 800 with me, and he went 1:55. We had a 2-miler, a separate 2-miler, Todd. Todd sat next to me in homeroom every day. He too was young like me. He ran a 9:17 2-mile. His splits were 4:40 for the first mile and 4:37 on the second mile. He just got beat out by Mike Cotton. Mike Cotton held the ACC indoor record for the 3,000. I went to the decathlon again my senior year, and I finished 8th in the state. The guy who finished right behind me wound up playing for the Green Bay Packers, and he was inducted into the Boston College Athletic Hall of Fame. I was working as a chef, and the general manager asked, would I be interested in running the Boston Marathon? And while I didn't really like distance, I certainly liked the idea of being in a major event, and I liked the idea of the challenge of it. So I did very well in the lead-up. I was given an invitational number, and I did very well to the lead-up, and I had a meeting with the ASICS shoe company, who told me if I could run a 2:30, they'd put me on the pro team. Now, this is the early 80s. These companies in the early days had a lot of runners being paid. Nike had 1,600 paid runners. And the other companies, ASICS, New Balance, etc., weren't far behind. They literally wanted at that time to take anybody who could get on the podium with their logo, they wanted that. I wound up running a 2:40, so I didn't make the pro team, but it was a great experience, and I stayed with the marathon. Having lived in Boston, it becomes like an annual ritual, a cleansing of your runner soul almost, and so myself and one of my high school teammates and another gentleman I went to high school with, he was a little older, He was a pro tennis player, and he was a very good runner. And the three of us would run together, and it just kept going. And then I eventually gravitated over. I'd always ridden a bike, and I wanted to gravitate over toward the triathlon, which was new in the country back then, in the early 80s. And but I didn't swim, so I started dabbling in some duathlons, and I did very well. There was a nationwide series sponsored by Coors Light. It had 12 cities in the U.S. it went to. If you did well, you got invited to the national championship. And I did very well, and I got invited to the national championship. I didn't go because I didn't see myself as a contender at the time. Just good enough in my category to get qualified. I had also returned back to the Art Institute to get my degree in illustration, so I actually kind of stopped running for a couple of years. When I did return, I started into coaching. We had a son, and we would walk up to the high school most days, and we'd watch the sports, and I saw their track team wasn't very good, so I asked if I could help. And I think it was about 2 years into helping, parents started sending letters to the athletic director asking for me to be the head coach. I wound up being an assistant coach. I left around 2000, and I went to a town called Wayland, which was the next town over. That's where Alberto Salazar is from. I eventually took over for his coach, Don Benedetti, one of only 3 coaches that Alberto mentions in his book. I did very well over there. One of the young athletes I coached, she went on to become an NCAA finalist in the 100-meter dash representing UConn. She now works for the Robert Kraft organization. They own the Patriots. It was prophetic because we had an interview in the Boston Globe when she was a junior, and I'd said in the interview that when she goes somewhere where she can get on a weight training program, she will run in the 11s. She ran 11.43 for UConn. She ran a 12.1 for me at high school, but she was a 3-time state champion. At the same time, I kept switching around. I eventually got into an injury caused me to stop running in my ankle, and I stayed mostly on the bike, and I wound up connecting up with some very successful triathletes in the New England area. And they kind of got mad at me one day when we went for a 75-mile bike ride. And after the ride, they got out for a run in a workout they call a brick. And I went for the run with them, and I crushed them in the run. And they insisted that I show up to the pool the following Monday. I did show up to the pool. They put me in with these old ladies. I could barely swim a quarter mile. But I liked the idea, and so I just trained at the swimming little by little to become good enough to stay close enough. In the triathlon, I earned 4 All-American honors. In a half Ironman, I ran a 4:31. My bike time was 23.9 miles an hour for 56 miles. I did it in 2:35 and then ran a 1:25 half after it. I stayed with that, and when I turned 50, I wanted to become the #1 triathlete for the age group in the Northeast. We were out in Oregon for the U.S. National Track and Field Championships. I had been coaching at Boston College, and one of our athletes, who was the ACC indoor and outdoor champion, multi-champion, she was a pentathlon, heptathlete. She finished 8th in the country, so we were out to see her. And we were out on the coastline and running on the Oregon coast, and I pulled a muscle in my calf and decided I would no longer compete. I would no longer train to compete. Because this happened where when you get older and you're training hard, your injuries will come more often and they will take longer to get over. It's very frustrating. So I took all of my 50s off, but I remained coaching. I wound up working for REI, and then eventually I drifted over to Marathon Sports. Marathon Sports is a very well-known business because of the Boston Marathon. We owned the Boston Marathon Expo as part of what we did. You didn't have to be a runner to work for this company, but there were a lot of really good runners there, and I was around a lot of them, and I was approaching 60 years old, and I would go out and run with them, and they would goad me to come back to competition. I wound up running a 1:30 half marathon in Boston, and it looked like it could have put me around the top 3 in my age group in the country. So I had decided to now start to pursue a national ranking. I spoke with the owner of Marathon Sports, who kind of talked me out of the marathon, because when you run a marathon, you're limited to how much you can compete. And you're kind of at the mercy of, in a marathon, of like if the weather doesn't go your way. So Colin Petty, who was the owner, advised me to go to track and field instead. And I always liked track and field more anyways. So building off of the kind of condition I had for the half marathon, I decided to pursue being a multi again. My first event was the Dartmouth Relays, the 50th anniversary I was invited up to. I entered 6 events. I won all 6 events. The last was the 1500. I lapped the entire field. The next event I went to was the USATF Masters New England Championship at Providence. I entered 5 events. I brought home 3 golds and 2 medals. I next went to the National Championship in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I only entered the pentathlon. I pulled a hamstring warming up for the hurdles. The entire company back in Boston had shut down, and they were watching on closed-circuit TV. You could pick it up off of USATF TV Plus. They knew something was wrong because they saw me warming up and could see I was touching my leg funny. My decision was, I am going to run until the leg breaks. I've come all this way. I'm not going home without doing anything. I wound up running a PR in the 60 hurdles. I didn't notice there was something wrong with my leg until about the second to last barrier. I realized I was doing well and made a movement, and it just bothered a little bit. The next event was the shot put, and I did not do well because of the leg. And then the next was the long jump, one of my strength events. It was my hamstring, and in the long jump I am required to pull when I hit the board. That really hurts where I was sore, so I didn't do well. The next event is the high jump. It did not bother me, and I jumped on par. The last event is the 1,000. Coming in, I had said to myself, I want to win that 1,000 outright. I lapped the entire field, and when I crossed the finish line, you can see me just looking up at the clock, and if you listen to the announcer, he's telling me to stop running. I'm perfectly fine. The other competitors all collapsed crossing the... I don't know how they could have been that tired. I was a lap ahead of them. I finished 4th, just out of 3rd place, and I wound up finishing the year ranked 20th in the world. I did not go into this expecting that I was going to... I just came into it for fun. So when I got back to Marathon Sports, I got a hero's welcome in the front. I worked up in the front office, and the warehouse was attached. And I looked Colin Petty, the owner, directly in the eye, and I said, my agent says you got that one for free, but it's going to cost you from here out. And Colin paid me to go and race. So then I started to do some masters races in New England to lead up to go back to the national championship, which was at Iowa State. I don't remember what I had won at the... No, I didn't go to the New Englands because they were after the nationals. I went out to nationals, but not just to do the pentathlon. I was entered in the pentathlon, the 100 hurdles, the 300 hurdles, and the triple jump. the first event for me would be the pentathlon. And the pentathlon outdoors consists of the 200, long jump, discus, javelin, and 1,500 meters. I did all right in the long jump. I did very well in the 200. I struggled in the discus. You only get 3 throws, and you have a 2-minute limit as soon as you enter the circle. And 2 minutes goes by incredibly fast when you're trying to concentrate. The discus is a very technical event. So I didn't do as well as I wanted to. So coming into the 1,500, I was in 3rd place, and I was down to 2nd by 600 points. To me, that would be an insurmountable amount, so I didn't bother to make I didn't think I was going to make the attempt to try to get into 2nd. I knew I would have to run the 1,500 as a time trial all alone. And I did the same thing there that I did indoors. I lapped the entire field, including the reigning world champion. Even the officials were cheering for me because it was just me. And I ran a 5:31, and it placed me 8th in the country for my age group. It was the 5th event on a 95-degree day. It wound up putting me into 2nd place. I wound up finishing the year being ranked 9th in the world. If I could reach to number 6, I would be getting a stipend from USATF. Number 5 is Daley Thompson. He is the 1980 gold medalist and world record holder, sitting only 4 places in front of me. I only came to have fun. And that's right. And just haven't let go, And so here I am, and I'm down here now, and I've entered, I think, 5 or 6 races. I've only lost my category once.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's to a guy who's the best in Virginia.
Incredible. Yeah, absolutely incredible.
So that's my, career as
Thank you for sharing that story. What does Aaron have to do? What does Aaron have to do to... He's freshly 28, just turned 28 a week ago. I think exactly. No, 6 days ago.
6 days.
Yeah, 6 days ago. He has now been training. He's in the general preparation phase. He's finished week 10. He's going into week 11. We've done some speed work. We've done, about 3 days a week of 20, 25, 30-minute runs, 45-minute runs consistently on the weekends. He's been doing some strength training. He just nailed a 5K time trial, doing some speed work this week, locking in. What would you recommend for Aaron at this point in time?
What was your time at the time trial?
1949, I believe.
1949.
On a track.
With negative splits.
Negative splits. I felt I didn't know what to expect, so I kind of just went out slow and progressively sped it up. So I think I can do better than that, for sure.
2 things. One, I think of so much that we accomplish is a state of mind. Anytime I've gone to, especially in the bigger events, when I went to the indoor championship, I had specific things that I said I want to accomplish. One was to win the 1,000. No matter what, I'm going to win that 1,000.
Yep.
When I went out to Iowa State, I went out intending to come home with medals. I wasn't just going to play now. I had researched all my competitors. I knew their strengths and weaknesses. So that mindset of saying, this is what I'm going to do. I've gone over this with Nick. I showed him my journal entry yesterday about how I will repeat to myself in the journal what I want to do. So right now I want to run that 550. By continually writing things down, I find I wind up achieving them. Because it's like you programmed your mind, and it's going to take over. You're going to go on autopilot. Now, 2, training specifically, like you're in general preparation right now, when it comes time for your races that are their goal races, a lot that I learned, I came from my high school coach. He was the main state record holder for the mile. He never told us that, and he never ran with us, and he was a young guy. But what he did was he constantly trained us to run 5-minute miles. So all of our speed work on the track was always on a 5-minute mile split, because a lot of our races were 3 miles, and he wanted us to run 5:30 per mile. And we were high school kids. And we were able to do that because on the team we had, I was not really one of the best. I had a teammate, Mark. Mark and he was a year older than me. His senior year, he broke 9 course records, 9 straight cross-country course records. Mark was a phenomenal runner. And Todd, who sat next to me, came out for cross-country to get in shape for baseball. And he runs a 9:17 2-mile. He finished a little behind Alberto Salazar. We did race against them in the New Englands. So it's amazing to think, Todd is very smart. He graduated from UConn in 3 years. He's a veterinarian. He has his degree from Cornell. He was very methodical about the way he approached the goal of going very low in a 9-minute, a 2-mile. What he did, he and Phil, they didn't like to do the quarters. I like doing quarters. Even if I was running a 5K, then I want to run at least 12 quarters. And if you're running, and so I'm typically, like I had done in the past, I'm going to run at 75 seconds. Actually, more like 72 to 75. I'm going to control that recovery. As I'm progressing, that recovery is going to get cut down. So that maybe a week or 10 days before the race, I'm going to run a mile in which I will get maybe 10 seconds recovery in between each quarter. So I will run the quarters at 70 seconds. I will get 10 seconds recovery and I will go again. I was explaining to Nick, I got into overload training. I really like doing it. So I'm not going to go 70. I'm going to go 65. And Phil, who ran the 4:18 mile, that's what he did a lot. You would see him doing quarters at 65 seconds. Because you're going to have to get used to that. You stress the body. It's like if you take a branch and you bend it too far, it'll break. But if you slowly bend it, it'll conform to the shape you want it. And that's what our bodies are like. You're going to stress your body to accept the load, the stimulus. And that's what you want to think about your training. You're going to eventually progress down little steps at a time. You're at 1948, now you're going to shoot for 1848. And so that's how I've always looked at it, and that's how I've trained my athletes. And especially for track, it's very easy to control your pace because you hear your lap splits. And when you are doing your intervals and you've done 8, but you're only racing a mile, so when you're coming into your 4th lap, you can draw back and say, yeah, but I have run faster on the 8th one, so I should be able to do it now in the race. Your mindset has to be 100% go. I'm going to do this. It's the only way I've found for me. But I'll say that I don't think that I'm the most talented person, and so I had to rely upon that more. That mindset saying, I'm going to do this, come hell or high water. You know.
Got it. Yeah. So just a mindset shift into this is real, this is legit, we are going for this all the way. And then the 400 meter workouts. So how would I know kind of
Now,
what
if you're
pace?
gonna if you're going for like a 5K, so like when I switched up to doing triathlons, I really didn't do anything under an 800 because they were more appropriate. But I'm going to run them at a 5-minute pace. But in a triathlon, I'm not probably going to exceed a 6-minute pace
Sure.
coming off the bike. But that 6-minute pace will seem so easy because I've trained at 5.
Yep.
And that's part of the reason why I do overload, is because it makes my races much easier.
And by overload, you mean overload is essentially what you explained as
I'm going to go faster.
stressing the body like beyond what the race is going to expect of you.
Correct.
So that once you hit the race day, you're ready to go at that slower pace.
Exactly.
Okay. Got it. Yeah, I mean, we've been training at 6-minute pace, and then I ran that 5K at, I think my average was 6:24, something like that, and it felt really good. Like I negative split every single one, and I'm still at the phase where we're just honing in. We're still just like figuring out what my time should be. That was my first time even racing a 5K or anything in multiple years. Obviously, I've done like turkey trots and things like that, but never something where I've like put actual miles on my leg and then I go and run. So it was a very cool experience to be able to do that and kind of get my legs back into it. But now it's just a matter of like approaching it in a way where, okay, yes, I just ran at this pace. Now I have to train this way, and kind of adjusting the training based on where I'm at.
Now, in high school, you ran a 420 mile.
424 and then a 1546 5K.
Okay, so it's still there. The thing that's
I hope so.
It's interesting is that there have been times I had to leave running for a little bit and then return. And when I returned, you were like, oh, I don't think it's going to come back this time. It always does. It's really amazing how it does that. Now, I want you to think a lot about what did you do in high school? Those are fast times. I think that 15 in the 5K is maybe a little more impressive than the mile time. Not that the mile time isn't good. But what did you do for workouts that you got to those times? Think about that, because that's probably... so when I'm working with athletes, I was just telling the group today, there is not a cookie cutter training system. Everyone is different. So what I have to do with my athletes, and this is the way we're trained, I'm a USATF certified coach, I have to get you involved. You have to give me feedback and tell me, what do you think is effective for you that's going to make you faster? And I want you to draw back on, you were doing something that brought you to a 424. You were doing something fast. What did you do?
That's a good question, and I wish I had a log of what I did in high school. I don't.
Good point.
I don't have it
because I had 20 years of logbooks, so I know from year to year exactly where I should be. You cannot do this blindly, and I learned that because Nick, I don't know if you got a chance to go down to the Nike store on Newberry Street while you were in Boston. Typically, they do put out Joni Benoit's running journal. And
I didn't get a chance to do that, unfortunately.
Not even a pro athlete can go through their training without having that written down and be able to draw back upon that from year to year to year. Because when you reach a certain point, not much is going to change, and you may be on a plateau for... Some of the pro athletes are on plateaus for 2 to 3 years. It gets very frustrating for them. But they have to draw back and look on the data that got them to that point. What happened was our junior year, our coach came to our core group and he said, I'm not going to coach you anymore. He said, you don't need me. because we didn't have internet, we didn't have texting. We did this on our own. We set goals where we said, this is how many miles we want to do over the summer, and this is how we're going to do it. And this is why we're going to do it. And we came into the season, and it's like, holy crap. We beat a team at the end of the season in the sectionals, Torrington. Torrington had been featured in Sports Illustrated. They had not lost in 56 straight meets. They were a powerhouse. I still to this day don't know how we knocked them off. And it made big news. But we did it. And it was something our coach always had. He was always telling us, we had the capacity to knock this team off. And there were certain things that he insisted we do. He insisted we pack run. And we did. We did this pack running. He had this saying that said that came from Rudyard Kipling's Jungle Book. The strength of the pack is the wolf, and the strength of the wolf is the pack. And like you said, Nick, that's where we run as a group, because that's where we get our strength. We feed off of each other. We feed off of each other's energies and ideas, and celebrate victories, and help them mourn through losses or injuries. That's where the team part of it comes in. When you're on the track, when you're on the road, you're on your own. But we raced as a team, and we talked, and it bothered other people because that's what we did. We did this as a distraction technique, so we didn't notice what we were doing. We'd be cruising along. I think if we sat and thought, oh shit, I'm moving at 5 minutes per mile, it'd be like, oh, that's too fast. And you'd sabotage yourself. So we learned to talk. Right. We were kind of a really different group that we had to. And I got very lucky in my life, though, too, because living in Boston and being around the marathon in those years, it was the mecca of distance running in this country. And I was exposed to a lot of people who allowed me to train with them. And but they cut me no slack. They weren't going to slow down for me. They weren't going to feel sorry for me. It was like, you're welcome to come with us. Just stay with us. And once I learned to stay with them, I got it into my head. Oh, I'm good too. Because in distance running, you got a lot of time to think. On the track, you don't have time to think. I was a half miler. I got 2 laps. I'm going to cruise through the first one, and it's all going to happen on the second lap. And I'm out. It's 2 and out. When I'd gone back to Masters, and I got back onto the track, it was hard for me to analyze my 1,500 or my mile times because it went by so fast. It was like, what the hell happened? When you're running a 5K, you can go over it in your mind and go through the whole thing. When you're running on a track, a short race, it's like, oh my God. I don't know. I saw the gun. I saw the finish.
Right.
But I've always drawn heavily back on what I learned from my high school years. It always worked then, and it still works now.
Yeah, I agree. I think I don't have any logs of anything. However, I could just reach out to our coach from high school and I would assume he has the same training style that he's done over and over and over. That's probably adapted throughout the years, but I can see kind of what he was doing at the time. And he's always writing things down, so I'm sure we could get something out of him. But also beyond that, I do like training with people, and that's one thing that I'm not doing right now. I'm doing everything solo. And so it would be cool to find a group or a club that I could train with. But my struggle has always been, relying on somebody else, or, hey, we're meeting up at this time, we're meeting up at this place, we're doing this workout. When I have a certain thing that I have to hit throughout the week, I have to hit, my zone 2 days, and I have to hit my speed work and tempo run. And so it's tough to, how do you approach that in terms of finding, somebody to train with, or would you recommend just going solo at this point?
You have a common problem in running because the elite athletes, this is a problem for them. They have to find somebody that they can train with. Often the women, they will have a man come train with them. That way they have somebody that's a little stronger that they're trying to keep up with. for men, again, part of the problem for U.S. running is we're different than the Kenyans and the East Africans. They train heavily together. They're insistent on that group running. What happened in the U.S. was when the money went pro in the 80s, all our U.S. runners went to far corners of the U.S. to train alone. And what the problem was, their managers were telling them to do this because they would be running for Nike or Adidas or Asics. And those companies didn't want their runners to have contact with each other. And it was really stupid, and it hurt our distance running. Because prior to that, when we had Bill Rogers and Greg Meyer was the last American to win the Boston Marathon in 1983 until Meb Keflezighi won it in 2000 something. But those runners were always seen together. I would regularly see Bill Rogers running with Greg Myers somewhere in Boston. They're usually down by the river or they're out at the Heartbreak Hills. But you'll see a group of runners with them, other runners. We had a runner from our town, John Klopek. He was at that level. He held the record at BC. We had Randy Thomas. Randy I worked for at Boston College. He was the head coach. He was the alternate on the 80 Olympic team. These guys were all together, you know, and they stayed together because they understood that group training. And now, in my in my marathon years, for the most part, I trained alone. But on the long runs, I wanted to go with, and these are 3-hour runs. We're not going for speed. We're just staying out there. My high school teammate that I told you about that broke the 9 records, he lived in Boston too, and we trained often together. And I got a lot of exposure to a lot of good runners through him because he went to Boston College, and at the time BC had a track. That's where all the good runners in Boston were going to do their workouts. So in the evening, on particular days, who's who is up there. So I'd often see like not only Bill Rogers or Greg Myers. At the time, trying to think of the coach of BC, he was very good too. He was a 4-minute miler. And there was just a ton of people that would be up there, and some of the best triathletes were up there too. And so I remember Mark getting mad because I was pacing along with this guy, Mark Supernon, who was one of the best triathletes in the country at the time. But yeah, now when I got to the triathlon, I did most of my training alone. What I wanted to do was I liked to swim with people because that way I could figure out how I was doing. I liked cycling with people because it's really hard to go out and ride a 50, 60, 75, 100 mile alone. When you got a group, it's better to work with them. Now, what I did with them is because I cannot draft, I will lead them. I will not allow anybody to come up and overtake me. So I will constantly push on the bike and keep them away. It makes my race very easy. But I need them to do that for me. Without them, I don't have that opportunity. But there was no one to come to the track and run my workout with me. And it was brutal. It was a 10-mile. It was 2.5-mile warm-up to get to the track. Then I would do 4 800s in 2:30. And I'm doing a 200-meter walk, jog in between. Then I'm going to do 4 300s at 50 seconds. Way much faster than I have to go. And then I'm going to go home. And the total distance came out to be, I think, about 10 miles it was. The worst part of it was actually the run home. Oh, I'd be exhausted. I could barely lift my legs. And I don't like running slow. But there was no one around to do that with me. So I had to do it alone. And sometimes you just have to adapt to that, you know. Now, one of the coaches I worked at with BC, he was Shalane Flanagan's coach for a little while. And so I got to see what they were doing. And same thing is that Shalane would have to run alone, because there might not be, in that level, you might have to find some way to get somebody who's being paid to be out there with you. But we're not in that, obviously, in that level. But it's a problem for them too, because you do. It's nice to have somebody to pace along with,
I think for Aaron's current situation, look, the marathon season build-up is a long build-up. We got months. So it's likely going to be some sort of compromise of training alone and training with others. And currently you're not doing any with others, right? Your current circumstances, you're pretty isolated from any run group you've been able to find that's been worth joining with. So that stinks. Maybe we need to expand our radius that we're searching for. Might have to drive a little bit further to get to these running groups. Maybe it's just once a week, once every other week, you meet up for a really solid 5, 6, 7 mile run Saturday mornings or Sunday mornings. And for me, running alone, it's going to demand a bit more intrinsic motivation. And throughout a very long marathon buildup, it's a finite resource, intrinsic motivations. You only have so much intrinsic motivation. But if you got that team that's saying, come on, we're meeting at this time, let's go, you don't need to scrape the bottom of your barrel as much as you might have to of intrinsic motivation. So
one of the components to group training is that you make a commitment. So if you're telling the group, I'm going to be there, they're expecting you to be there. And
for sure.
Sometimes it might be a group that's a serious group. So knowing that you've made that commitment makes it easier. So at the end of the day when you're tired and saying, oh man, I don't feel like getting off the couch, that you already told them forces you out. And that's a factor, because as a triathlete and doing multiple training sessions a day, sometimes the worst was in the afternoon. I'd have a 5 mile run to do, and it'd be like 90 degrees out. I've already swam or I've already biked. I'm exhausted. The hardest thing was getting off the couch. Just getting off the couch. And I'm telling you, I've heard from Peter Reed, who was the world champion in trial, same thing. It's when there's nobody there that you've made the commitment to, it's hard to get up off the couch. But when the training group is there, one, you've made the commitment. Your credibility will lessen if you don't show up, and they won't take you seriously. For me, that's the way it was, because I was running with people who were very, very good. And, if I didn't show up, they just weren't going to bother with me. But people will get involved with you when you show up, because this guy's he's always here. He loves it, So that's one of the great things with the group.
Like if we were to give Aaron some homework, it would be look for potential running groups. Don't have to commit. Don't have to commit to any of these groups, but maybe identify a couple of them, check them out. And then 2 is journal. I would challenge you to answer the question of, why are you running? Why are you doing this? Because that's the question that you're going to have an answer for. On race day in Richmond, it's good to prepare for that now, and during the half marathon, when it seems like it would be easier to run to the moon. You'll need to have that answer of, why am I out here? Why am I doing this? What am I doing this for? What's the greater cause? What's the meaning? Why am I doing why? So that's that. And then the third thing I would journal on and try to maybe reach out to Mark is, what were some of our workouts, and what were some of my workouts that led me to that 15:46 that you can remember, you can think of. And I bet he has that all logged away, to be completely
because even
honest.
for Nick, for you to repeat what you did this year in Boston, you have to have that information available to see what led up to it. You can't go blindly into this next year thinking, oh yeah, I did it, and I don't have to draw back upon what got me there. You will always have to draw back on it, and you will do this for year after year. That's why I kept those books, is because, like I said, not even a pro athlete can just not write this stuff down and go into the next year thinking, all right, if I'm going to run this, where should I be at this time? You want to have control of your training situation because it's stressful. It's stressful on your body, stressful on your mind,
And Kevin,
So-
when you log a workout, what are you logging? Do you log perceived effort? Do you log distance, time? What are you logging? Weather?
Everything. Here's what I'm doing. And I did it manually. I did not enter it on computer. I write it by hand. And there were these books I had that Nathan puts out. And I'm doing a couple of things. I have an amount of, and especially as a triathlete, I had to keep track of how many miles I'm running, how many yards I'm swimming, how many miles I'm biking. I have to keep track of that. Then outside of that, I'm keeping track of the weather. I don't have to. It's interesting because it may be a factor into how I did for the day. I will put down any other activities like once I started into triathlon, I got a Bowflex here because swimming required more upper body strength I didn't have. But I didn't want to lift weights, and we lived in an old house. I didn't want to bang on the floor. So I got the Bowflex, which is perfect because as an endurance athlete, you want to do high rep but low weight. You'll simulate a race situation. And it translated both for running, actually for all of them. I became better on the bike, running, and swimming because I started to strength train. And again, back to Joan Benoit's journal. She lifted weights and insisted that she could only do what she's done by lifting weights. This is a woman who is my age. She is 67 also. She has yet to go over 3 hours in a marathon. It's unheard of. She's just phenomenal, But she lifted weights. And so I feel that I think a lot of runners don't achieve their true potential because they think that the lifting of weights will hurt them, but it won't. You're strengthening.
And you're recommending high rep weight training.
So what I do is I have on the Bowflex, there are different routings in the cable system. I'm generally working upper body, so I'm doing bench press. I do 15, and I'm just doing 2 sets. I used to do 3 sets. I'll do military, I'll do flies, and I'll do tries. Then I have to reroute the cable system. I'm now doing pull downs, wide pull downs, narrow pull downs. Same thing, 15, 2 sets. I reroute the cables. I'm doing curls, 2 sets. The last thing I'm doing is going to be seated rows, regular seated rows and crossover seated rows. When you're running a fast 5K, you're going to need arm strength coming down in the last half mile to push. The legs can't go any faster than the arms. The legs will be ready, but the arms may not be ready and the ab may not. Now, in between each of those sets, coming in, I have a Roman chair. I do sit-ups. I've been doing this for 20 years. Nick will tell you, I'm out there running with all these young guys your age. It doesn't seem right. I'm in a situation where I can't run with anybody my age. And most people, even close to my age, Nick will tell you, who do I run with when I'm running on Wednesdays? I got to come up and run with you fast young guys, all half my age. And I'll stay with them until they want to blow me off in the last mile or so. I can't match them, But so I have that problem even more so now. Now, where are you located at, Aaron?
I'm in Loudoun County, Virginia.
Okay. And there's no running groups nearby, huh?
So, not really, no. I tried joining up with one that was around like my age, and there's like a 200-person group chat, and nobody shows up.
No, they're just chatters.
The one time I did go and there was a decent sized group, they said, all right, let's go, and they start walking, and then I start looking around, and I'm like, hey, does anybody want to run? And everybody's like, no, I think we're gonna walk today. And so one guy ended up running with me. and
Yeah, I can see, because, for me, a lot of the, and I'm sure probably for Nick, a lot of our drive comes from our talks with each other. When we ran on those Wednesday nights, and there was you, and there was Dave, and Lucas, and it would be myself, and there was this camaraderie. And Aaron, when this little group, who was not competing against each other, but working with each other, when we went to the Hokie Half Marathon, I've never in my life seen 5 people all reach their goal.
That's
it was
awesome.
incredible. And I had told Nick, I said, that had to do with our interactions with each other.
Yeah.
We were not against each other. We were not competing against each other. And those guys are the same age, But there was this exchange of ideas, because often we were running, you guys would pepper me like, tell us about it. And Nick and I crossed paths after I finished, maybe just a few minutes behind him at a 5K. And the next thing you know, here we are on a podcast, a year later. And that's what it is, a year later. And it's connecting up with Nick that got me going to run a very good Hokie half marathon last year. And mine was probably the only one that didn't exactly hit. I wanted to go 140 or better. I went 140.05. I could see the clock. I saw Nick and Emily and his father cheering for me. I could have made it, but I was so thrilled. I was like, I'm just coasting it in, But every one of us, and I was amazed by it, and I still think it had to do with the camaraderie of the group, the sharing of ideas, and the sharing of, yes, you can go and do this, And that's how I've always been with Nick, saying, all right, you can do this, because I told him based on times what he's going to do. I told him based on what he ran at Hokie, I said, you're going to go up to Richmond and you're going to run this. And he did. And then I said, based on that, this is what you're going to run at Boston. And he did.
Yeah.
And for me, because I've been around it so long, it's easy to watch what somebody's doing and knowing what they're doing. Saying, but part of it is telling them, you can do this. You can do this. If you're watching the Tour de France, listen to the managers on the cars. They're not giving them any technical information. They're telling them how they're doing. They're saying, you're doing good. Stay with this. We've got this stage. Stay with it. The boys are doing great. That's what they're telling them. There's no no, you've got to run. You're only at 17.8 miles per hour. They're not giving them that kind of information. They're now giving them what goes into their head that makes them feel positive. That's huge. And so,
I love in a race when you make a couple of friends that you're running with in these long distance races, and then I just look at them and I just tell them how good they look. I just tell them, I say, you're looking so good right now. You're looking strong. And just for me, that really helps to take my attention off of myself and to just have a positive outlook towards somebody else. And I think it boosts them up. They're like, yeah, I guess I do look pretty good. But then I get to just cheer on someone else next to me and give them that boost. And it's one of the hardest things.
That's what the running world is kind of about. It's very different than the cycling world. The cyclists are not like that, and the races aren't like that. When you get dropped off the peloton, you might as well drop out. Runners will punish themselves, say, no, I'm having a bad race, I'm going to make myself finish. Unless there's an injury, they're going to make themselves finish. You will see Kenyans coming in at 240, 250, 3 hours. They've had a bad race. They blew up trying to stay up with the early go. They are not going to drop out. They are going to finish. Cyclists will drop out. Cyclists will not work with each other. They like to work against each other.
To your earlier point, Kevin, on with a short 800-meter race, it's the start gun and then it's the finish line. Both these long-distance events, you have enough time. In training for these long-distance events, you have too much time to just be in your own head, overthinking every single step. And that's another thing that I think another fringe benefit that group running gives you is that you get
Yes.
to look at other runners, count their, like, see their cadence. You're studying their body mechanics. You can just get this different mindset that's not so internally focused, and you get to shift your focus outside of yourself, and that's powerful. That's very powerful as well. But there will be times in the long distance races where you're alone, and you won't have that. So it's good to do both. That's why I'm thinking we need to find a compromise.
Good point, because as a triathlete, you are time trialing. You will not know where your age group people are at. Once the field gets rolling, you're on your own. You have to figure out what you and what I do is basically knew where my strengths were, especially in the half marathon. For me, in a half Ironman, that makes me very dangerous for a long run, because I can grind away at you better than on a short 5K. That means I got to move fast, and I didn't do as well in those. Everything is much quicker. The swim is much quicker too, whereas the 1.2 mile swim allows me a longer swim, where I can glide along. They're not moving as fast. When we're doing a half mile, they are motoring. They are cranking through the water. At a mile, they don't move as fast, and I can stay a little closer to them.
So when you're moving a bit slower, you have more time to think and be in your head, and then vice versa. When you're doing the quicker, speedier, shorter distance stuff, it's more
you don't have
panic.
the time.
It's more go. Yeah.
I've kind of always said that, and I was talking to somebody today, like, distance running exposes the coward in you, because one, there's no pain and no thinking in a 100-meter dash. As a high school coach, everybody wants to run the 100. Why? Because it's over in a few seconds. You're not going to be breathing hard. You're not going to be on the ground gasping for air, feeling like you're going to die. So everybody wants to run the 100. But in the distance racing, you have time to think. You have time to be a coward. If you're running 5K, about 2.5 miles in, you start saying, oh, I don't think I can do it. And once you allow that voice to come in, game over. You have to stay very positive in your mind. And again, going back to the pro athletes, it's no different for them. In the coaching program, and I know I forgot to send it back out to you, Nick. I think in the end of that, there's an article. It's called Pain. Trying to think of what the subtitle is. It's 5 elite level marathoners, and they're explaining what they use for a distraction technique. Because at some point in the race, in a 2.5 hours, even they got time to think. And so they're going to try to distract themselves. And for me, it always was, I'm going to talk. I'm just going to talk to somebody, and I'm going to try to give them my life story in 30 minutes. And it distracts me from realizing that I'm working. Even recently we're just hiking, and one of the guys that we were doing the Appalachian Trail was saying, Kevin didn't shut up. We were coming up these hills, and he didn't stop talking the whole way. I could barely breathe. I don't know how he was doing it. I was explaining to him, I just didn't want to know we were going up the hills. So I was trying to tell them my life story.
Yeah, that's good. That's awesome. Let's wrap it up there. I think this has been just an incredibly insightful conversation. I'm really thrilled that we had it. We had the opportunity to have that. Kevin, you mentioned to me you're thinking about Richmond, the Richmond half.
Right now, I think for me, as an elder runner, I have to focus more on my food. I have to be very careful about what I'm intaking. I'm very thin. I don't eat a lot. I can't eat a lot. But I'm noticing that protein, and it's probably the same for you guys. Like, I've gone out and done some morning runs where I just felt, and the same thing on the bike, where I felt like shit. And it's because I either had something that was more carbohydrate in the morning. Now today, I think what Well, of course, the last couple of weeks, what I've been doing is switching and having yogurt in the morning because it's good. It's got protein instead of just having a donut or a piece of coffee cake,
Right.
And I'm running much better. Now, for lunch today, I had tuna fish, and that little tuna fish had 16 grams of protein. I felt really good this afternoon running the 5, and it's my second run.
Good.
And it was a little under 8 minutes per mile, and I was like, wow.
Yeah. A gram
So yes,
per
I'd
mile.
like to. I'm hoping things are going to. I would like to come up to Richmond and make a mark in the
That would be
half.
awesome.
That is, because if that's a flat one, and I come
It
off
is.
a hokey, and where I'm standing right now, I might say like, all right, let's see if we can go 135 at hokey. If I go 135 at hokey, I'm going to come into Richmond and probably drop a sub 130.
It's insane. I don't doubt you for 1 second. Richmond is a fantastic course. I've been telling Aaron all about it. It's cool. It's in the fall. It's beautiful.
Yeah,
It's flat.
That too.
It's friendly. There's a straight bomb downhill finish. It is, which is painful but fast. Let's leave it there. I'm gonna upload this. Get the word out. All right.
Oh, because I have to go. I
yeah.
probably have to get up to Richmond anyways, because I'll have your portrait for you. Did you tell
Yeah.
Aaron you're getting a portrait?
Kevin he's too much. He's incredible. He's more generous. As good as a runner and athlete, he's an even better artist, I would say, and a very, very, very generous friend.
Oh, there you go.
That's
You
outrageous.
barely see the drawing.
I love
That's
it.
incredible.
I'll trade you back your singlet, your Marathon Sports singlet.
But
yeah.
here's
That'd
one
be great.
that's finished. I did 100 of my athletes. That's one right back there. Let's get this thing in a little closer.
He is.
Because my thing with my athletes was,
That's so
if you
good.
do well for me, I will reward you with the portrait. There it is.
That's so incredible, dude.
All right, so what
So I'm
time do I have to
currently
run
working on
for a
Nick's.
portrait, Kevin?
Say that again, Aaron.
I said, what time do I have to run for a what time do I have to run for a portrait?
Well, what do you think you can get back to?
I mean, I've never run a marathon, so this is a massive undertaking.
Your training is to go for.
I'm gonna do the marathon.
Well, I'd never run one before. When I got invited in my first one, I ran a 250 at Boston, and I worked
Wow.
full time. I had no coaching. I just followed what I knew from high school, and I
Yep.
trained off of that. And the Sundays, I would run with Mark. We would do the 2 to 3 hour runs, and of course Mark would do this thing. And I know we're gonna stop it. Mark will play this game when we're running on those long runs. In the last half hour, he's gonna start doing this little commentary. And next thing you know, we are running 5:30 miles because he'll start
What's the
saying.
commentary?
The commentary will be like, we're now coming back into Boston and we're coming up the Heartbreak Hill area. And Mark will start going, like he's a commentator, and say, and it's the local boy, Kevin McGovern. He's leading the Kenyans. He's got about a 10-yard lead on him right now. We'll see if he can hold off. We're coming up Heartbreak Hill. He's looking pretty good. The crowd is going crazy, It's almost just like he was doing like when Bill Murray was in the Caddyshack. He's
Right.
on the 24th tee, Cinderella Kid. Oh, he got a hold of that one. And that's what Mark would. And next thing you know, you're just cranking because this guy's like feeding you, and he's getting a charge out of that. And they would do that with me when we trained on the bike for triathlon. We'll see somebody half a mile ahead, and one of the guys will come up to me and he'll just say, "Go get him," and it just sets me off. And next thing you know, I'm just hauling ass, and I'm catching up to the. But
So I think
again, that's
there-
that camaraderie of having other people. So yeah, I can understand for you. Aaron, where it's tough alone.
Yeah.
To do
But it's a good experience. I am definitely enjoying the experience because I think pushing myself to do this by myself, if I can do it alone, then I can do it anywhere and everywhere, and it's all good from here on out. It'll only get easier.
I've always looked at the events though too as like I like to challenge myself physically and mentally to see what is my breaking point. Because sometimes you hit that breaking point, it's like, oh, I'm not as strong as I thought I was. But it's fun, like and it just for me, it's been a life story. It led from one thing to the other. Who would have known? I wound up as a coach at Boston College. Who would have known I wound up being ranked 9th in the world, in my event. And if it took me all the way to 60 to get there, that's okay.
That's right.
It was fun. I met people like Nick. I've met so many people. I met you, Aaron.
Yeah.
Our whole group down and even right now I'm doing a portrait for Jess. She does have a winner. It's Michelle Lowry's husband. So I'll be painting a portrait and they will pay Jess. She's running in Chicago. In October.
That's amazing.
So
thank you for doing that, Kevin. That's the beautiful thing with this race is this is your first marathon. You're 28. You've got the whole rest of your life. This race isn't going anywhere.
Oh yeah.
This distance is not going anywhere. It's going to stay right here. And this is your first one coming up. And we're just going to see what happens. At the end of the day, we're going to share a massive victory celebration meal all
100%.
Together.
As long as I cross the finish line.
That's right.
You'll cross that finish line.
You will. I know you will.
You should have no problem.
I don't think you will.
Last question for the experts. So you're prescribing me zone 2 runs, Nick, and I did my what I thought was zone 2 last week, and I would get through the run and I would finish the run just feeling horrible. Yeah. And then I started looking at my Apple Watch during the run, and it would say like zone 4, zone 5 while I'm running. And I think I was, trying to push myself pretty hard. So this week, I just said, you know what? On these zone 2 days, I'm going to do what actually feels like zone 2. And my pace has dropped by about like a minute 20 per mile. Okay. So is that the preference as we go for that? We don't do something in between where it's still kind of pushing it, but
I like the polarized intensities. And like Kevin was saying, him and Mark, they would do these 3-hour runs, which I can only presume were conversational throughout.
Very, very conversational.
So keep it conversational on these zone 2 runs. And just for further context, Aaron had some shin splint issues a few weeks ago that seems to have been remedied, touch wood, with a new pair of shoes. And it seems like, with the analogy of bending the stick, we probably went a little too far, and now we're coming back to a happy medium. So, slow down those easy runs, but please let's keep focused, locked in on the 86-second 400s for the track workout. I've got Aaron doing, you'll love this one, Kevin, I've got him doing, and up to him to find the time in his schedule for this track workout when it works best for him, but it's a mile warm-up, and then 8 quarters, 1-to-1 rest, with, at the end of that, 2x800s with some rest.
Nice.
Yeah, I think that'll be good to get your dose of speed in on top of the zone 2 work, because the marathon.
So basically, every workout is zone 2, conversational, easy pace, and then I let it rip on the track workout.
Let it rip on the track workouts, and then next week, looking ahead, spoiler alert, I'm going to add some incline, like some hill stride outs after the zone 2 runs to get that race pace sharpness under your legs. 4 to 8 like 25-second stride outs.
Cool.
So you can get some speed work in every day.
I like it.
I like it too.
Again, I would say, Aaron, try to see if you can get some of that information from your coach to find out what you guys were doing.
Yes.
He probably stayed very consistent like our coach did, and until he allowed us to take over. But I wound up staying and all of my life I pretty much did, because I've seen articles in some of the running magazines about how quarters, that was the old standard. And that's what we did, quarters. We did a lot of quarters. And there were a lot of the guys who were running very, very fast in high school, especially if they were 2-milers, would go up to doing 20 quarters on the track.
A lot.
I wouldn't go that high,
Yeah, that reminds me of the old Czech Republic runner. I can't remember his name now, but in like the 50s, maybe he was German. I can't remember, but he Emil Zatopek.
Zatopek.
Yeah, he would do like 30, 40, 400s, 200s, very little rest, but he's iconic for how much suffering would be expressed on his face. He's just always dying on all of those. So that was his approach, and he was one of the best runners of all time.
At the time, yeah.
Holds like in like some Olympics in the 50s, gold in the 5K, 10K marathon.
Yeah, he had I think a rare like double or something like this back then, because it was a little before my time, but right. I do remember Zatopek. Yeah. So
there are many different ways to skin a cat, but I think with running, it's always an N of 1 study at the end of the day, which is in favor of this journaling technique. See what works for you, and studying the past, learning from the past, and then getting feedback every day from the work you're putting in and seeing how your body's responding to it.
And one of the other things too that is helpful with the journal is like, if you start to get any little aches and pains or an injury, you can start to pick up on the pattern on when they're coming. Because I had some problems, and I started saying, "Oh yeah, I had to rearrange where my workouts were," because if I came off of a rest day and went right into something very intense, that's generally I would get an injury. The body was telling me, I want you to ease me back in off the rest day. And typically, when I coached at college, if we were going to give an athlete a rest day, it was not the day before the race. It was 2 days before the race. We want them back out running the day before the race, so the body's already used to. But again, we picked up on a lot of these things by just keeping track of, this is the pattern.
Yeah.
Oh, here's the injury. And when you do it for many years, you start to see it a little easier,
Yeah, you start to see what causes it. It's like how people preach food diaries, and you start to understand how the food affects you, but you're doing this for running.
Yeah.
Cool.
Exactly.
Amazing. Well, Kevin, it was great to meet you, and the advice has been amazing. So I'm sure we'll be keeping you updated, probably talk to you on here again. And
very good.
I'm pumped to see you in Richmond.
Very good. I hope to get there, yeah.
Yeah,
I'll be
I
psyched.
can't wait.
So,
thank you.
And hopefully I'll be telling you guys like in 10 days I ran 550.
Yeah, we'll have you back regardless, we'll have you back on to debrief that race.
To debrief. Very good.
Right. Catch you guys later, all right?
All right.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.